Hi, thank you all for being here. We are so glad that you have come downstairs for this second portion of our Wallace Moore Lectureship event today. Before I turn it over to Dr. Handy and to Bob Hariman, I'd like to recognize and thank Colleen Jersild. Since my time at FPC, when I was here in 2001 and 2002, Colleen has been a very strong supporter of adult education here. It is she who established the Wallace Moore Lectureship series and has provided ongoing funding for it. So Colleen, thank you from all of us. For sharing your passion for Christian education with us. I'd also like to thank the members of the Wallace Moore Lectureship Committee for all of their hard work in making this a wonderful event. Bill Bishop, Bob Babasink, Bob Newhouse, and Mary Watt. And a special thanks goes from the committee to Bob Hariman, who graciously said yes when we asked him if he would lend his expertise in leading a time of question and answer, a fireside chat with Dr. Handy. So I will turn it over to them now. Thank you both.
You want to use the mic? Yeah. Okay. Great to see everyone here. I've got a few questions that have been collated from the staff and some others, and we'll look through those, and then we'll open it up to everyone else and have as much fun as we want to have. So, you recently were hired to lead this seminary. Go ahead. And what? Okay. Yeah. And when you're being hired, they always ask you for your vision. And then you get the job and you have to worry about deferred maintenance and lots of other things. But that vision is important. And so I wonder, what is your vision for the role that McCormick Theological Seminary can play in the city of Chicago? And as part of that, how might that involve working with other denominations, other faiths? And the final part, you can pick any part you want. How has this been influenced by ICE activity and the response to the protests?
I feel like I'm taking a dissertation comprehensive exam. It's like we only have one question, but in 5 parts. So I'll try to take that first part initially. And thank you for the question. It's been a delight to join the McCormick community as the 12th president. What I always say in response to your first question is, while I would love to say, here's my great vision for McCormick and for theological education as we know it, it is not solely my vision. I define myself as a collaborative leader. And so I'm walking alongside other persons on the staff. We have several vice presidents that I meet with consistently. And, you start with assessment and getting to know people in the community, do the gap assessment and find out where the needs are and what things need to be done. And then we kind of moved into a strategic planning process. So we are in the process of preparing to implement a 3-year strategic plan that will move us into 2029, which will be the 200-year celebration of McCormick Theological Seminary. And we decided to strategically plan around the word story. What I found at McCormick is that there are tons of alums around the city of Chicago and beyond who are really proud to be McCormick alums and who have stories to tell. And so we started listening to those stories. Story is an acronym, and I invited staff, students, alums, the board of trustees, all of our constituents to come and to be responsive to the strategic planning process. Story means strategic, let me get it right, strategic, timeless, operational, revitalized yearnings. And so what do we need strategy for right now? McCormick sold its building in 2023. When David Crawford was the president, I think it was a wise move. It was a shared building with the Lutheran School of Theology, which is now owned by the University of Chicago. And we moved in with Lutheran School of Theology, Catholic Theological Union, into a collaborative building and share model. I actually think that that's the answer to the future of theological education, is that we have to learn how to share, we have to learn how to collaborate across denominations, ecumenically, but also interfaith, which is one of our core values at McCormick. But you don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? And so we identify what is timeless, what do we never want to see go away at McCormick, and like the scholarship from Colleen, right? Support for students. How can we operationalize some of the things that we're talking about? What needs to be revitalized? The move was huge, and it had an impact on the community. You're kind of downsizing into a smaller space, and things get pushed by the wayside. A pandemic happened, right, called COVID, and that shifted and changed and moved a lot of things. So what do we need to bring back? And then finally, yearnings. What are we yearning? What do we want to see happen in the future? Behind the word story, behind the colon, as we say, we chose the tagline, Awakening the Possibilities. And so, we believe the possibilities really are endless. Theological education has been in what some would call a landslide in the past decade, and we've seen that happen in churches in terms of church membership, attendance, etc. Mainline denominations are struggling in some ways, but the Association of Theological Education has recently reported that they're now seeing an uptick in enrollment in the Master of Divinity degree. We have a large number of, I think, DMin students. Most of them are Presbyterian, so we forgive those over here, Presbyterians who went to United Methodist seminaries like me. Didn't come to a Presbyterian seminary, but I really want to I've been getting reconnected with the Presbytery of Chicago, reconnecting McCormick. I don't think I've missed the stated meeting, maybe one since I've been here. We are actually hosting the stated meeting next Tuesday at McCormick. And so connecting to the Presbytery and to the churches in the Presbytery has been a big part of the vision for McCormick, while being still an urban, cross-cultural, ecumenical, theological center and hub. I'm also very interested in us attracting younger learners. The average age of seminarians right about now is between like 45 and 55 years old, and not just at McCormick, but across a lot of seminaries. We have second career persons who are coming back for educational development. But if we don't attract Generation Z and Alpha and get them interested in theological education, we're not going to be around and vibrant for very long. So that's a piece of that. And then I'll get to the last one around ICE. That was very much a concern. And there was a presence, ICE had a presence in Hyde Park for a short stretch. And of course, we all know what's been happening out of Broadview and across the city. And so the first thing we had to do is to assure our international students that their study visas are legitimate, they have legitimate reasons for being here that are documented. That documentation doesn't always help, but we made sure that we provided development for our receptionists, for example, at the front desk, to help them to know how to respond if ICE comes to the door, that this is a private building, private property, you have to have a warrant, those kinds of things. What happens to students when they go outside of our door is a continued challenge. We don't have any control over that, but we're doing everything we can to ensure safety and to make sure that we're being responsive to what's happening, not just in Chicago. We saw what just happened in Minnesota, just a tragic killing of two citizens there, and there's even a presence in Georgia, from what I understand. I was there a couple of weeks ago in College Park, which is a south suburb of Georgia. So we're all just being vigilant. Everybody can't go to a protest. Everybody's not able to protest. But what we say is just do what you can, where you can, how you can. And I'll stop there.
She not only answered all those questions, she answered the ones I was going to ask next. But I'll push a little more. So we're talking about theological, pastoral education. When you get those young students, what is the trajectory of that education going to be? You've already said it's going to be collaborative. But, 100 years ago, the ministers had to learn a little Greek, a little Hebrew, and then a lot of theology. Now they have to learn a little Greek, a little Hebrew, and what else? What do they need? What do you think is the kind of education they're going to need to work collaboratively in a world fraught with change?
Okay, I'll try not to have a 4-point answer, but I do have 4 in my head already. One thing that we're seeing, we talk to our alums, and you get the "what seminary didn't teach me" kind of responses, right? Some of the practical things in ministry that pastors, that ministers, that other folks need to know, like how to engage in a budget planning process, right? Not something that we would think is popular, but that's what people are asking for. I need to be able to know how to manage a budget and engage session in that work. And so some of those practical kind of aspects of ministry, I think are things that we don't need to get rid of, and things that are obviously also related to spiritual formation. When I was at ITC, I taught a religion and hip hop class, because I had pastors who were saying, look, I need help with hip hop culture and how to translate what I'm doing. How do I preach the gospel to the hip hop generation? And so it was important to engage them in educative processes about the culture, how it emerged in the late 60s and early 70s, and how to connect. I can always point to Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime show from last year, right? My mother's 84, and she was like, well, I didn't really understand anything he said, but I got some of the symbolism, right? That takes sitting down, watching it again, translating, and trying to get an understanding of it. So I think that we have a generation of young people who have important questions. Some questions they feel like have been shut down by the church or have not, really been taken seriously in church contexts. And so we've seen, a long time ago, that 17 to 35-year-old age group leave the church in droves. How we attract them back is for us to get in the posture, I think, of faithful listening, to say we're here to listen. This is a teaching, learning process and exchange. Classical education says you have an expert in the room, right? What we say now is that the smartest person in the room is the room. And so we have to be inclusive of everyone and what perspectives they have to say. I think that was 3. 4 is this notion of community engagement, community activism, community involvement. Because of the kind of world that we're living in right now, people want to know, how can I be responsive? We're looking at some tracks in human rights type work that is, open to anyone at the doctoral level who wants to engage in further study around human rights engagement, and how, what are specific best practices, if you will, for responding to what we're seeing happening in the world right now.
Okay, I can ask a couple more, but if others want to speak up, please do. So you have demonstrable achievements as a scholar, and as a pastor, and as an administrator, and as an activist. And those 4 roles are often kept far apart from each other. And the people in them see themselves doing one thing and not the others. And lots of people on the outside look at it that way, and they like to see it that way. But there are times when they can be joined very creatively, but even so, that might still disturb some people. So could you say a bit about how you wear all 4 hats, and how the rest of us should think about the ways in which those roles now are blending together creatively and powerfully?
I said, yeah, you're talking my language now, right? How to avoid a fragmented self, right? And this notion of fragmentation. When I was an academic dean, I was always asking presidents, how do I show up as a creative dean? And they're like, I don't know, I'm a historian, and I'm 70 years old, and I don't know what to tell you. Literally got that response once. And there's not a lot of wiggle room sometimes given for you to integrate all of who you are and how you show up. We can get away with the pastoral piece because it's a seminary, right? And now, I think when I first started as faculty, it was almost frowned upon that you would be a faculty person who was also a pastor. You had to get permission, in fact, for that. And now they're saying, wait, we need faculty and we need administrators who have some pastoral experience, because the students are saying, you know, I want to sit with someone who's done what I'm doing and who can provide that kind of insight. So those two pieces are easier. I think some of the more creative aspects are hard, but this is what I love about McCormick Theological Seminary. I feel like I finally found a place where I can bring a non-fragmented, integrated self. For example, I was able to bring my djembe drum to a Friendsgiving event that we have for students, and I played the drum while a student sang in Swahili. And that was spontaneous. I didn't even know he was going to do that. And he was like, Dr. Handy, can you please keep playing? And he got up and he sang beautifully. And I was like, I found my people. And it doesn't diminish what I do as president. You know, presidents are expected 75 to 80% to be engaged in fundraising, finance type work, which I also enjoy, but I don't have to carve out and cut out these other aspects of myself, because McCormick is very much a community of creatives who are still, as our mission said, interested in academically rigorous theological education. But, you know, some of them are ministers of music. You're decreasingly seeing people come to seminary to be senior pastors, actually. That's not your big group now. It's people who are interested in other types of ministry. I was having a conversation with alums. I'm going to get what this stands for wrong, but it's APCE. It's a big Christian education conference that just happened in Pittsburgh. And folks want to see Christian education make a comeback here, right? And so people are coming to be educated in a number of things. So you have those classical courses that you mentioned that folks have to take, the core. But we're also thinking about what are some other creative types of electives and experiences that people can have, so that they know too that they don't have to be fragmented. If the president isn't fragmented, I don't have to be either. I keep my door open in my office, unless I'm in a meeting, of course, and folks know they can come in and kind of talk to me when I'm there, and yet I do all of the other things that I need to do, including meeting with the finance committee of the board every month and making sure that our endowment is strong. McCormick is debt-free. Yes, we are a debt zero institution with a very strong endowment, and we're able to provide affordable education because we don't have a lot of federal student aid that's needed. And so there's an economic justice aspect to that that's happening. And I love all of that. I'm here for all of it.
And we're very glad you're here.
Yeah. Can I help you out here? Can you talk a little bit about Christian nationalism and the role of seminaries in counterbalancing the growth and funding and the negative side of that?
Yes, I'll do my best. We definitely want to be doing what you're saying. I think our mission, do I need to repeat the question? Oh, okay. He asked what we can be doing as a seminary to counter Christian nationalism and what we're seeing happen there, which has become a kind of dominant Christian narrative in the U.S. context. I think it is living up to our core values in our mission and in our vision, and making sure that we're, as the young people say, standing 10 toes down on those core values that are related to social justice, to interreligious dialogue, ecumenical unity. Those are the things that counter what we're seeing happen with Christian nationalism. And I was having a conversation in the back. I also think, both in the spirit of what it means to be a Presbyterian and beyond, it's also being willing to come to the table, though, with people who do have different views, right? I'm really ready for us to get past the kind of bifurcations and binary thinking that keeps any and all of us from moving forward. On the one hand, we have to, fight against things that are oppressing people. People are losing their lives, literally, right? And so we have to be responsive to that. But we also have to hear, it's not the what for me. Here comes the Christian educator. It's not the what, it's the why. Why do you believe the way you do? Right? For some people, it's just family ties. It's cultural. They haven't really had an opportunity to think critically about what it is that they believe. And when you have those conversations, you help people to see a lot of what Christian nationalism is asserting is quite contrary to the gospel, to what Jesus was actually up to, and others in the biblical text. But you can't get there if you're not willing to sit at the table or curate spaces where we can have the conversation and where people can be heard.
Other questions?
My name is Don Troutman. This is the first press Wilmette issue, the scholarship fund. I remember Rip Miller and the monthly collection plate would throw bills into the collection plate specifically for the McCormick Seminary Scholarship Fund. Now, over the years, that's gone in and out. In fact, we had to beg McCormick some years ago to give us a name that we might use as a scholarship recipient. So I guess my big question is, how can we be more current? Is there a fund? Does it exist? And is it an opportunity for others to contribute to?
Yes. There's always a fund. There's an annual fund, and then there are specific, of course, named scholarships that we have. I was speaking to a gentleman upstairs. I can't recall his name. He was the partner of someone who introduced herself, and he said he's the Hebrew Bible professor of the student who is the current recipient of the First Presbyterian Wilmette Scholarship. And he just said upstairs that she is the best student he's had in 25 years. Wow. Yeah. It is intro to Hebrew, I think it was, course. And I said, well, I'm definitely going to take that news back to McCormick. So yes, I wouldn't be a good president if I didn't say, we need your support. You can always go to the website, and just like you have a QR code in your bulletin, we have QR codes that you can scan. I can pull it up on my phone if you want to scan it today, and send your support. But you're assured that our students will be the direct benefactors of your giving. For me, maybe because I came from among the faculty, and then as an academic dean, and then as a president, students are always first. And we're trying to develop what we call a student-centered wraparound design at McCormick that really does focus on supporting our students. But there are other things that you can support. We're going to be making an announcement, I hope any day now, about an endowed professorship that we received from a former member of the Board of Trustees and her family. Pretty significant gift that we're excited about. As you know, we received, some of you may know, $278,000 from Evanshire Presbyterian. They had to close their doors and decided to give that gift, 20% of their proceeds to McCormick. We have an excellent staff of vice presidents. Dr. Kurt Peterson, our vice president of institutional advancement, who takes care of development, has a PhD in American religion and history, taught for years at Lake Forest, lives on the north side, and he's just been amazing and a godsend as a development person. So yes, yes, and yes.
And Don anticipated my last question, which was going to be, how can FBCW help you? And there are many ways we can help, it seems. And do we have time for more, Holly, or should we wrap it up here?
I think we have time for a little bit
Okay,
more, and
couple
I have one question, and that is, Dr. Handy, how do you see local congregations like ours being able to interact with McCormick in a mutually beneficial way?
It is. It's a great question. We have, I would say, at least 4 of us who have some kind of cross-fertilization around what you're saying, which is strategic partnerships and connections to congregations. So I mentioned Kurt. Reverend Annette Dixon is our Vice President of Community Engagement and Alumni Relations. We hired my executive assistant, Reverend Dr. Derek Rice, who's also the strategic partnerships, and then, that's what I do as a president. So we're very interested in revitalizing our connections with congregations. I understand from your pastor and from Jane that there used to be something called, the Theological Academy. What was it?
The May Fund. It's our theological endowment.
Yes.
We have some resources there that we're going to continue that conversation.
Okay. Everybody's not going to be able to come to seminary, right? And so, you know, do any of you know Dr. Ken Sawyer in church history at McCormick? Yeah. I think Ken is coming up close to 40 years, as is Anna Case Winters. And I always say, like, is there anywhere that you don't teach? I mean, he's at McCormick, he's in churches, he teaches at the prison course, and that kind of engagement outside of the walls of McCormick, connected with our congregations, is important, and providing more, you know, they don't have to be degree-seeking opportunities. People are increasingly now interested in certificates and micro-credentials and lay leader development. And so I'm hoping that McCormick can really be a hub for the development of lay people. And we can, you know, have our faculty and other persons engaging folks in congregations. Sponsor a McCormick Day and have us come out, you know, and worship with you, and do something like this together. Nobody showed up today, but we'll come. They got the word late. And have some time of fellowship with you and get to know you and engage in an exchange, and maybe have a faculty person come out and do a lecture and share.
Okay. Well, this has been very informative and more. So thank you very much for sharing your experience and wisdom with us. I'm sure everyone will take something home today.
Who's coming to the stated meeting on Tuesday? Come sit with us for 3 hours.
Yeah, let's give her a hand.